Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Curator's Corner. I'm Jeff Seymour, Director of History and Collections here at the National Civil War Naval Museum, and I am right here in front of this case where we put out a collection of CDVs. What's a CDV? Well, it's a French term, carte de visite. Oh, it's French. Fancy, fancy. All right, what is a carte de visite? It is a calling card. And calling cards were very popular by the mid-19th century, and people would, when they went to social functions, would leave basically what we would think of today as a business card with their name on it. And this was popular at social events, so it's a little bit of an upper class thing. Well, photography is coming along during the 19th century as well. And these CDVs became very popular at the time of the American Civil War. Photography for the average person was a little bit of an expensive thing. And in France, you see a little bit of development of certain technologies. First, the daguerreotype in 1837, and a couple of other processes come along in the next couple of decades. But a Frenchman begins to work with a process called albumen, and puts these small pieces of paper on cardstock that becomes the CDV. Now, what is albumen? Well, if you are familiar with eggs, that's precisely what it is. It's egg whites. And the process perfected by the late 1840s was worked on by a Frenchman by the name of Diderot. And Diderot took the albumen, and what he did was coat a thin piece of paper in albumen, put together in a solution with a salt. Typically it would be table salt, sodium chloride, but they would also use aluminum chloride. And what you do is you soak this thin paper in this solution, and it produces sort of a glossy feel to it. It seals it in. And the crazy thing is you dip it into silver nitrate. And once you go through a few more steps in this process, it creates an image. And these CDVs became the social media outrage is probably not a good term, but it became the rage during the American Civil War. It wasn't actually until Diderot perfected this process in 1854. It wasn't until 1859 when he was able to publish a picture, a CDV, that he took of Emperor Napoleon III, that it became the rage. It became that social media binge thing that everybody had to do. And it spread across Europe. It came to America, and with the outbreak of the American Civil War, it was a cheap, efficient way for more people to have access to photography. And so this was something that they could do, and it became so cheap to reproduce. In fact, Diderot perfected a way to put 8 images on one glass plate in order to multiply the effect, to more easily reproduce these. And so a lot of the images that you see today that are used in history textbooks, Abraham Lincoln, for instance, are actually produced as CDVs, carte de visite. And this became something very easy that people could send through the mail without having to pack it up into all sorts of crazy things in order to protect glass plates and so forth. Now, the CDV comes in a standard size. This was standard across the medium throughout the 1860s and in 1870s. Later on, different sizes became popular, cards and so forth. But the standard size for a CDV is a piece of paper, that thin piece of paper, about 2¼ inches by 3½ inches. And then it's put on a thicker cardstock of 2½ inches by 4 inches. And this is standard size. And people bought little, or big, I should say, albums, and they kept these in those albums. So this is really Facebook. This is Instagram of the 1860s. And this was something that more people had access to photographs that they could keep of their loved ones and so forth. But it became also popular to collect the images of, say, celebrities, presidents, President Abraham Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth. He was the famous actor. In fact, when he was shot, when they did the autopsy, they found 5 CDVs of women in his pocket, including one of Lucy Hale, who was supposed to be his fiancée, who was the daughter of a U.S. senator, which caused a little bit of a stir. But CDVs were very popular, and something that collectors even today are focused on collecting, very popular to collect. One of the things that causes us some issues is that the U.S. Navy changed their uniform regulations. You're starting out with the uniform regulations from pre-war, getting into the first year of the war, and by 1862 we have our first change. They are again changed in 1863, again in 1864, again in January of 1865, and believe it or not, they go through another change by December of 1866. So you've got several changes there. And these changes include the shoulder straps, the hat bands, the hat insignias, the cuff insignias, and so forth. So all of these things are at play. In 1863, we add the star to the collar, or not the collar, the cuff. And this is part of course, these changes represent a changing and expanding service. But it makes us look at these images and we have a question of when were they made? Where were they made? Well, all right. Many of these images, they come with a distinctive back to them that tells you exactly where they were made. And this image, it's Reading, Pennsylvania. So we might know who the photographer is, or we might kind of have a guess of 2 or 3 if they're operating in that area. Now, we don't have a name for him. When was this image taken? This looks like an early war image, so we've got that to go on. But is this gentleman wearing his uniform throughout the war and decided to take an image with it later on? So those things kind of throw us for a loop. But they are great in showing a number of things. They show us the faces of these men who were in the Navy or in the Army or people in civilian life. They show us hairstyles. They show us a little bit of clothing styles. These sorts of things are interesting to us. So it is the social media rage of the mid-19th century. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that you can find a number of CDVs out there on the internet, but you'll have to come here to the National Civil War Naval Museum to see this collection of naval officers on their CDVs, and some of them were some funky hairstyles and facial whiskers. Visit us at portcolumbus.org or any of our social media platforms and make sure you like us there. And we'll see you soon at the National Civil War Naval Museum.